Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Anurag, one of the co-founders at TrueFoundry. We are a Sequoia-backed startup building in the machine learning operationalization space. And today we are pleased to have Noam Lautner, who is the research operations team lead at Gong.io. So just a brief about Gong. Gong is a revenue intelligence platform. It enables revenue teams to realize their fullest potential by unveiling the customer reality from the conversations that the revenue teams do. So Gong analyzes the customer facing interactions across phone, email, web, etc. to deliver the best insights for the revenue teams so that they can use that to close more deals. Just one quick fact, it was also ranked number one in the top 100 software products to use in 2021. So, Noam, like it will be great if you can take 2 minutes to maybe introduce yourself. Really a pleasure to have you, and thank you for making time to speak to us.
So most welcome. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Noam. I lead the research operations team at Gong.io. Like you said, our platform at Gong enables customer-facing teams to actually upload all their conversational data, all their interactions with the customers, let the system do analysis, and get reality-based insights on what's going on in their organization, and not have to use their gut feelings about trying to estimate what's going to happen. So that's basically it. We allow our customers to upload everything: calls, video conferences, emails, all interactions with the customers, and we do analysis on all these. Inside all this operation, my role as research operations team lead is actually building the platform which will allow the research group at Gong to do the research, get the data, train their models, and release them for later deployment by our engineering teams. Um,
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Noam, for the introduction. I think that's super helpful. Maybe to start off, would love to kind of hear a little bit about the kind of use cases for machine learning in Gong, and how it has evolved over the last few years since you started, because it seems like that's an integral part of the overall offering for Gong as well.
so actually, yes. I think our system, our main engine of insight, our main, or the bulk operation is done using uh, machine learning based models. We have a lot of different models. So, for example, in order to analyze calls, we need to process the video, classify the frames, do some processing on certain types of video segments. For example, if we have slides like presentation, we do some work extracting information from these slides. Um, so this is like the video processing part, which is one pipeline. Uh, the voice actually gets automatic transcription. So this is another pipeline which involves quite a few models,
Hmm.
detecting where the speech is, detecting which speaker talks when, and also the content of the conversation. Uh, these are then passed down to downstream models to do additional analysis, extract topics, and uh, use NLP-based technology to extract more information from the conversation. For emails, again, different pipeline of NLP processing, messaging, comments. All these are getting processed inside the system. So as you can understand, we have to deal with a lot of models. Some of them are like global for all our customers. For example, when we do ASR, then usually we use the same model for everyone, dependent on the language. For example, all English speakers get the same model. So this is like one part. Another part is letting the customers actually do training for specific models for their own content, which means that another major challenge is actually serving.
Got it. So just diving a little bit into the second part that you mentioned, and this is something we have heard of from other SaaS companies as well that serve models to different customers. So how do you kind of manage this infrastructure wherein you have to serve like 10K models for each customer, like do you kind of end up hosting them like as a single service? Do you host multiple models into a single service and then dynamically load them? Like what is the infrastructure challenge that comes with such a huge number of models?
Yeah. So right now the pipelines are actually running the models specifically for each customer. So there's a machine that comes up and handles all the calls of that company. Again, this is very costly, so we need to
Okay.
reduce the costs. Um, and Actually finding a solution for this kind of problem is a difficult it's a difficult problem. I don't think we have already a full streamlined solution. We're working on it. Having said that, this is not part of my team's work. This is done at Gong. This is done as part of the engineering effort.
Sure.
My role is actually dealing with the research. At Gong, we have a separate environment, separate cloud account for research versus production, and we do the research work separately.
Yeah.
Get the data, do the training, finish the training, release the model, and then the model gets sent to the deployment pipeline handled by engineering.
Perfect. So let's go back to the research part, and because I'm sure you end up using lots of terabytes of data. It'll be good for the users who are listening to, maybe if you can give a sense of the vast volume of data that you have to handle at research, and how much the importance of the cost from an infrastructure perspective for these engineers who are researching on these models kind of comes into play. Would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so actually having the research separated from production allows us to control the amount of data that we use. So we
Okay.
can use a lot and we can use a little. And like I said, part of the question that we are trying to answer is how much data we actually need to get good enough performance. Um, I think our data sets are again, speech data sets are large. We have a few hundred hours of speech, which translates to a few hundred gigabytes of data, which
Yeah.
is pretty big. Um, NLP data sets are a little bit smaller in size, but they can be many lines of many rows. Um, and actually, I think the amounts of data and the data size is less of an issue for us because we're not in production. If we needed to ingest all data in production, then it would be a whole different ballgame.
Sure.
So actually, we are choosing how much data we want to take, and part of exploration and part of our research work is actually understanding the amounts of data that are needed.
Got it. And then when researchers kind of work on these data sources, and they would be training models, they would have to spin up like compute resources. So how is that infrastructure kind of allocated? And does your team kind of provision that and manage that? And how do you do it? Like what is the tech stack currently you use for that?
Yeah, so I think one of the problems of the current infrastructure products that we have for ML operations in the world, this is like one of the biggest problems because so I'll describe what we do here at Gong. We usually have the researchers do their work on their own machine, either their own laptop or usually a machine in the cloud, and they get all the data they need from production to their machine, and they do all the work there. Once the model is final, once we have everything ready, we know what data we need, what kind of features we need. Everything is already done. Then my team gets the go, and we construct the automatic pipeline for creating for processing the data for getting the big amount of data into the researcher's hand. Usually, it's hand in hand. I mean, while the researchers work, um, we get the tasks and we and we actually automate some of their data access. Um,
Got
so
it.
this is how it works for us. When we have like already done tried and true method for training specific model, then we can take this and push it into an automatic system that on new data can retrain the same model.
Okay. And on what system is this pipelines built on? Like, what is the tech stack that is powering that
I'm
behind
sorry.
the pipelines that you are kind of building? Once like on what system is it built? Like, are you using something like an Airflow, or how are you orchestrating that?
So we've tried looking into many platforms, many available platforms, and I think every platform really excels in one use case. So, for example, if you do, I don't know, object classification on
Mhm.
pictures, then you can find a system that does it perfect and also includes labeling and everything. But once you have like more use cases, then either you do it yourself or you have to mix and match different systems.
Okay.
So about a year ago, when I started building this, the team and the system, we came to a conclusion that most of the platform we need to build ourselves.
Okay. Interesting. So, love to kind of, Noam, get a view of maybe if you can take an example of one particular data type, whether it's a video stream or images, or even a text data, and maybe walk through the entire step-by-step process of from the raw data to say the final researched model, which is ready to go into engineering team's hand for production. What are all the steps that happen, and
So
where does
again, the first stages of work is the research is the research is done by the researcher. He or she goes and gets their data and does their exploration and analysis and everything. So it's really every kind of model has its own process of how we take this from research and move it into a production pipeline. Um,
okay?
I
Uh,
think. Mhm.
so So my
Okay.
question was like for say different kinds of data, like does the operational platform that you have to build for supporting the researchers, does it vary depending on the type of the data? And if yes, like what are the nuances between that?
So what I have to do is actually hide this complexity behind my tools so that the researchers don't have to actually deal with them.
Okay.
Uh, I think maybe one of the most challenging part of the work that in the current world, in the world of now, is actually around security and privacy and making sure there are no leaks and making sure no one who has no authorization can access the data. And this is a special problem for research because we access large amounts of data.
Yeah.
And this data is naturally private data of our customers, and we need to make sure that a, this data is not leaked. B, there is no customer that gets the data from another customer,
Mhm.
either through, this can also be affected by model outputs. So, example, if you're using large language models, we might infer something from one customer that and another customer gets private information. So this is something that needs to be taken into account. So a lot of the work is done for creating the pipelines that are secure, that only let the authorized people touch the data, and naturally also create the log that allows us to later find out who touched the data and what they did with it. So this is a major part of the work, and it's done differently for different data sources. So if we have like a various number of a large number of databases, each holding different type of information, and each is accessible differently and needs its own set of credentials and everything. Um, a big part of the work is actually streamlining this process and giving the researchers the tools they need to access the data in a more or less standard way, and also allow them to mix and match results from different data sources, which in general would be very costly in terms of infrastructure.
Sure. Could you give some details, Noam, if you don't mind, into the architecture of this system as to how you have architected it, maybe at a high level? Uh,
So one thing is storing the data in secure locations and having each data point being annotated as belonging to a specific customer,
okay,
um, and uh, um, and having access rights according to customer tenant ID. So everything needs to be separated. Everything needs to be accessed via all of our credential mechanisms, and everything that needs to be and everything that can be automated is automated, so that we let the machines do the work, so we don't need to actually log anything because people are not involved there.
got it. And whenever, like, suppose some of these models that are researched on ultimately are going and shipped to the customers and helping them make the decisions for the revenue teams. Now, how do you kind of where do the research teams come into play in terms of retraining some of these models, and where does the infrastructure for does that comes into play, because a lot of these models will change with the drift in the data and things like that. So how does the infrastructure handle that?
So again, like I said, the actual training and retraining is done only when we have a really well versed method of doing all of the pipeline stages.
Okay,
And this is actually a pretty rare occasion.
okay,
There are a few specific models uh, uh, that we can actually automate the retraining. For example, if we have already a speech recognition model for a specific language, then if we have a newer version, then it's pretty easy to do retraining with the same parameters and everything, just refresh of the data. So this is one thing. Most of the time, having data refresh also changes a lot of the content, and also necessitates actually having a researcher um, do again some research in order to make sure that the new model is actually performing better than what we had before.
got it. Got it. One other question with regards to the features, like as the researchers create the features and you kind of create the pipelines to ensure that they are productionized in certain way and usable. Like, do you kind of end up maintaining, offline feature store and online feature store, or like, is there a same feature store that is powering everything for the entire team?
So most of our models are not using online features.
Okay,
So it's most of it is offline models, which are trained offline and also activated sort of offline. So it's online in terms of the call is getting processed as soon as it gets in the system, but it's kind of a standalone model that doesn't need constant data. We have a predictive analysis team, um, which starts to actually consume features in that way, and we are in the process of understanding how this fits in to all of the system. Um, Again, I think that when talking about online features, this is mostly related to production data, data in production that's constantly getting ingested, and this is
yeah,
something that's also part of our production system. So less of
sure.
my domain.
Sure, sure. Sounds good. One other question was more diving a little bit deeper into the cost side for these researchers. Like, while they end up using their own machines, like later on, like, how do you kind of, as an organization or as a part of the overall, budgets that are allocated, how do you provide the cost visibility as to how much cost is going into, say, a particular type of research? How do you kind of, create the infrastructure for that? Is that something that's already done internally at Gong by your team, or is it something that's still work in
So
progress?
the high level costs are being analyzed, yes, and like I said, something that makes it life a little bit easier for me is that we are having a separate account for research resources. So we can we know exactly what we are paying. So in this respect, this is good for me. Um, but again, cost management is a difficult problem. Trying to analyze exactly which team used which resource, um, how much it cost before, and how much it's going to cost in the future. This is something that we are constantly building tools for. It helps that we're a SaaS company. Everything is in the cloud, so we get at least we get the tools that we need generally for cost management.
Do you end up using Kubernetes, Noam, by any chance for the class, like for the
So
research?
definitely, I think one of the biggest changes that my team introduced is actually moving all of our research, at least our generally available tools, like the platform that we are exporting for the researchers. Um, Everything is done is being put on Kubernetes. Um, I think that for research, the major thing in Kubernetes is that research, by definition, is sort of burstable effort. It kind of your machine is idle for a week, and then you need like a week with 100 machines.
Yeah,
What we did before that, the researchers have their own machines. Then they need to do part of the training. Then need to take down the machine, redeploy with a stronger instance. Um, and this needs to be done in multiple times during training. So part of my work is now helping them get access to resources automatically from the Kubernetes cloud.
awesome. I would love to hear, like, because again, this is something like, that option, while we are seeing increasing for Kubernetes, it's still very low, at least in the ML usage. So I'd love to understand as to, you talked about one of the points that led to this change, but is there some change that you have seen, say, from before Kubernetes to now that you are on Kubernetes? What is the change that you have been able to see as an organization? That is one question. And second, like, more around for you to build this platform on top of Kubernetes, like how easy or difficult was it to kind of build the orchestrations and the abstractions for the researchers?
So I cannot really say how it is after you move to Kubernetes because it's in progress. Some of the
Yeah, okay.
things are already there, some things are still not. I would recommend anyone who is getting into this that really early on in your journey, you need to think of scale, and you need to think how your group is going to work. And Yeah, I think Kubernetes, and we are using Argo workflows for some of our instrumentations, but there are a lot of other toolings on top of Kubernetes. And actually, I think most MLOps systems are all require Kubernetes for managing the resources. So I, I don't see any platform in the future that can do anything related to MLOps without using Kubernetes, to be perfectly honest, until something better comes along. Yeah.
That's quite a bold statement, and I would love to double click and would love to hear as to why do you say that. I align with that, but for the audience, I would also love to hear your views as to why you think about it
So
this way.
I think one of the biggest reasons is what I already said before. Scale to zero is really, really important in terms of cost management. I think the biggest waste is having machines that are up and not doing anything.
Yeah,
So this is like something that's really important and really relevant for research environments. So this is one thing. Another thing is that this needs to be agile. It needs to be deployable. So if I come back to the security issues and then privacy issues, then we are very soon we are going to have to separate everything. We're going to have to to keep the data from Europe in Europe. We already do that, but it's getting more and more strict. So
Yeah.
the data needs to stay where it is, and you need to bring your code there. Doing this in anything other than everything than a click of a button, which fires up a Kubernetes cluster and builds everything um, automatically, then it's really big waste. So I think yes, you need to deploy it in a lot of places. You need to deploy it securely. You need to have your mechanisms tested and tried and tested, and you don't want to do it again and again. So you do the work good. You do it once. You do it automatically and instrumented. And everything is code, and then you can use it quite a few times.
Awesome, awesome. I think that that's great to hear. Like, we as a platform also made that choice to kind of build on top of Kubernetes for similar reasons. Like, we believe that ultimately all the companies that use ML will probably need to move to Kubernetes for want of scale and reliability. So it's great to hear from you, on that. One other question, Noam, and this is something that we were having an internal debate on or discussion on, and given you have chosen Argo workflows for your instrumentation, we were trying to choose between Argo workflows and Airflow. I'd love to hear your views as to what made you choose Argo workflows say over Airflow, or was it you know you found both of them equally good and
Yeah, so I think in general, here at Gong and in general in other places, you'd probably prefer buying a managed service, at least
okay,
when you're big enough. When you're big enough, you probably want to buy as much services as you can, um, as long as you can use them. Um, Given that our pipelines are really, really diverse, like we talked before, we have different data types and different flows, um, and we need to introduce new flows and new functionality pretty quickly. Um, and I think also a matter of personal preference. In the end, I think working with Airflow specifically, maybe I'm not really sure because for me personally, I didn't work with this platform,
okay,
um, but I think it's a little bit more flexible using Argo workflows.
got it,
Um, it actually enables us to build different pipelines for different stuff. Um, and I think also if you have strong Airflow people, then use Airflow. If you have
got
people
it,
that know Argo workflows, use Argo workflows.
got
I
it,
don't think there's an inherent advantage in any of these general purpose tool sets.
got
I
it.
don't think Argo workflows is actually a pretty mature platform. It's being used a lot. It's being used under the covers of a lot of other sort of other flows, workflow frameworks. Um, that's the reason why we chose it.
Got it. Amazing. That's great to know. Just a follow up question on the research infrastructure. Like, do you also provide like for the research team a place where they kind of run their experiments in terms of comparing different kind of models and then taking a decision on which one is
So
better? And
yeah, definitely, we do have an experiment management system. We integrate it with weights and biases. Um, Again, some points of friction. None of the platforms are giving everything that we need, which is
okay,
natural. Um, we've looked into at least two others before, um, and I think there's still work there also for the community.
okay.
Uh,
We'd love to hear your thought. Like, where did you find this a major piece missing, say, in the experimentation piece in the landscape of companies that exist? Maybe two or three challenges that you have seen there. Would love to hear about.
so I think really, I'll circle back to security and regulations and compliance. Data governance is a really important thing that I think is being overlooked by many of the platforms.
Amazing.
Um, I mean, model registry and model deployment and this part of the pipeline is actually being covered more in more systems. I think it's probably been a bigger pain for the industry as a whole. For me personally, um, the other part is more important.
Got it. Got it. Maybe double click on the data governance as to how you kind of define data governance in terms of taking care of that even during the research process. I know you have touched on it before, but maybe again just for clarity for the audience.
So again, it all comes back to knowing who touched your data, where they took it, what they did with it. If you know these things, if you have a log of everything that's done with the data, then you're pretty much covered.
Got it.
Again, you have to be mindful of who is looking in the data. But I think at Gong we have a specific challenge that we are storing large amounts of data, and almost all of this data is PII, is private information.
Sure.
I mean, these are conversations, these are business secrets, these are customer lists. Everything needs to be protected, um, so we can't let anything slip. So actually, this is it. This knowing where your data is, knowing who did what with your data. That's and that's a difficult thing to do.
Got it. Got it. And how big is the research team, Noam, for whom you are building the infrastructure? And it will be great to hear a little bit about how this team has also grown, and how that kind of changes the kind of optimizations or the kind of other functionalities that you have to put on the infrastructure side for this research
Yeah.
team.
Just to give some numbers, we're currently the research group at Gong is currently around 50 people already.
Yeah.
We have two NLP teams, so around 12 people there. We have a speech recognition team with 7 people. We have a predictive modeling team with 4 people. We have several other individual contributors, uh, so around 50 people. When I joined Gong 3 years ago, I was the fifth member of the speech team, and there were, I think, 4 NLP researchers. So that was it. We were about 10, 12 people,
Yeah.
um, and now we're 50. We're doing massive amounts of data labeling, um, uh, relatively speaking. Um, so if before it was perfectly okay to have my own machine and do everything on it, now it's no longer the case. The amount of data sources also increased. The amount of the types of data that we extract from these sources also increased. So we're getting into more and more parts of the conversational information that we have. Um, and doing that at scale requires building a team to make the platform, to allow the researchers to click a button and get the data, rather than trying to search through 20, 30 databases to find the right table that contains the information that you need.
Sure, amazing. And then in terms of, I do not know if Gong is currently multi-cloud or it uses a particular cloud, but given as the research needs increase, probably the cost of machines in one cloud versus others also differ if you go to GPUs and all. So, is there a strategy towards going multi-cloud at any point, or if you already are, I would love to hear about the reason for that.
I'm not sure. We are currently working. You can say multi-cloud. Most of our infrastructure is on AWS.
Got it.
Um, and having like multiple setups in AWS alone is already a challenge. We do work with other cloud vendors in somewhat smaller capacity, but I'm sure this will change in the future.
But what would be the motivation for this change? I'm curious to know. Why not stick to one cloud vendor? why the need to kind of even
So
have this?
actually, this is way over my pay grade. I think I have enough questions of my own to answer. So this is something that
Okay.
I'm not dealing with.
Okay, okay, got it. Understood. No worries. One other thing, Noam would love to hear is you kind of have built the platform from scratch at Gong. Like, if you kind of had to decide today between a build versus buy, like what ultimately influences that decision, and how do you choose between what components to actually build, buy, or even use open source? So all those three facets would love to hear about.
So my perspective is actually that Gong actually needed to build this platform, like, I don't know, maybe 2 years before we started. Um, as as soon as you have, I think, as soon as you have enough customers and have enough content and enough models, especially in a company like Gong, where we do actually the work of multiple companies, if we look at the landscape right now. So you have a speech vendor and you have an NLP vendor, and you do the downstream modeling. Everything is simple, but at Gong we do everything ourselves. We need the best of class performance upstream in order to get the good insights downstream. So everything is needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be best in class. Um, and in this respect, I think if I started working on doing everything on Kubernetes, and actually giving the researchers the ability to work on a scalable, flexible platform, um, would be uh, would be nice to have right now.
Okay. Great. And do you see the need for using anything like a distributed training in house, or is that infrastructure also already a part of the system?
So, like I said before, in the future, I think there will be no other type of training. Each customer oops, each customer has his data in his own data center or in his own cloud account, and you need to take whatever you need from each without extracting the data from there, without taking the data. So I see no other option, as long as we need to keep the data private and safe. And this is where the world is going, I think.
Okay, got it. Got it. One last question, Noam, is around the point we were discussing before the call, which was like you mentioned that the world is still very very nascent in the journey of the ML operationalization. So I was curious to double click on that point and hear your views there as to what leads you into saying that statement, and what do you see changing in the ML landscape maybe over the next 5 odd years?
Yeah. So first thing is actually the tasks are going to be changed. Are going to change the research tasks. Research NLP research is going to be transformed. We are going to be less doing our own models and more using large language models and these
Immediately.
humongous creatures that give us such a good starting point. So it's going to change, and I think we're already doing work with these kind of models to get our to better use our own data. So either take the model and fine tune, or use it to create to generate more data, to generate specific data. Start creating data sets using big classifier, and training smaller classifier that can be used in a more specific situations. Um, so this is the I think the way we work with text is going to change. Um, so this is one thing. Um, I remember.
It's still in
So
the
yeah. So so this is one point. One thing it's going to change. Another thing is that what I was saying about the landscape of tools that are available. That when you have a specific use case, or specific model, or you want to train a type of model for a specific task, then you can find the system that fits you perfectly. Once you get into more use cases and more data pipelines and more data types, then it gets much more complicated, and probably you need to mix and match your tools,
Yeah.
or just create your own.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. I believe like today a lot of companies have to create this own their own set of tools because of the evolving nature of ML and the different kind of problems they deal with. And as kind of things mature, probably there will be a set of companies that will be able to solve for this, and hopefully the need to create internal tools reduces. That's hopefully the goal, and let's see how it goes. Um, Great, Noam. Final things to wrap this up. Anything for any startup, any company that's actually starting on their ML journey, what would be some of the key things to kind of keep in mind? Some of the problems that you people start realizing much later, but it would be better to kind of keep in mind right from day zero based on your experience of building the platform at Gong and the journey you have seen.
Yeah. So again, let me stress security, security, security. You need to define. You need to configure all of your systems so that you are ready for tenant separation and ready for applying GDPR. And if someone wants to delete their data, you need to delete their data. You need to know where the data is. And this, as soon as you think about it, the better. The sooner you think about it, the better. If you're building the system from the start to support this type of separation, then you're off to a good start. That's one thing, and another thing is again thinking about scale really early. Um, make your infrastructure agile and flexible. Um, make your make sure you have scaling capabilities. You can deploy and fire up as many machines that you want when you need them, but have them taken down as soon as they're idle. So these are I think the two most important parts of building the platform
Okay.
to enable ML research.
Awesome. Great, Noam. Any final thoughts from you? Otherwise, it was great to have you, and great to hear and your thoughts around also using Kubernetes as the go-to thing for ML. That really resonates. Any final thoughts from you?
No, I think we already covered quite a lot. It's been a pleasure. It's been interesting talking to
Yeah.
you.